Wanita bernama Elizabeth ini membuat marah orang-orang Kristen dengan video-videonya yang membahas kekristenan. Elizabeth ini bukanlah muslim, dia seorang non-muslim. Mari kita lihat salah satu videonya yang sangat membuat orang Kristen marah. Di sini Elizabeth menjelaskan kenapa ajaran Kristen itu tidak masuk akal.
The reason that Christianity doesn't actually make sense is because it's not a religion that's created around the teachings of Jesus. It's a religion that was created with a specific narrative in mind, and then they just reshaped Jesus's teachings to fit that narrative. Let's not forget that Jesus had a powerful movement that was not afraid to be killed, to be persecuted, and this was a huge threat to Rome. So what they did is they got in front of the movement and created a religion that would still serve them in the end. How they did that is by deifying Jesus and making him seem like he's equal to God. And yet over and over, Jesus clearly distinguished himself from God, saying, "The Father is greater than I, serve only the Father, worship only the Father has sent me." He makes it very clear that he is not God. He says, "I and the Father are one," but that is not the same as being equal to God. And yet 300 years later, Rome and a bunch of early church fathers create a creed and put Jesus up in the Holy Trinity, which separated us from him, because now we can never be like him, which is what they want. Because if they had millions of Christed people walking around having the same effect that Jesus did, then their entire system would collapse. And so what they did was they created this separation, and again, not based on Jesus' teachings. They then reshaped it and gave you other interpretations of those teachings to just help you have some peace of mind. But if you read just Jesus directly, it is very clear that he never said that he was God.
Nah, tentu di kolom komentarnya banyak orang Kristen yang tidak sependapat dengan Elizabeth, seperti beberapa komen berikut. Bahkan ada yang memberikan dalil ketuhanan Yesus, dan Elizabeth menjawab bahwa dalil yang diberikan itu punya banyak kemungkinan interpretasi, dan menggunakan dalil itu untuk meniadakan ayat lain di mana Yesus dengan jelas membedakan dirinya dari Tuhan. Tentu tidak bisa. Elizabeth juga pernah membuat video yang membahas sejarah bagaimana ajaran Yesus terdistorsi sehingga berbeda dengan ajaran asli.
The Roman Empire hijacked the Jesus movement, and people seem to have this idea that the church is made up of these innocent, sweet priests just trying to do the Lord's work. In reality, it's the evolution and remnants of the most powerful empire in our current history. Rome got in there quick. It set up its hierarchy. It put Jesus on this unattainable pedestal of divinity that we could never attain. They took Jewish hope for liberation and turned it into a never-ending wait for salvation. This ultimately only served the empire, not our actual spiritual awakening. Any group that threatened their power and control was labeled heretic and persecuted. They told us anything outside of the Bible was considered demonic in order to control where we went to for truth. They condemned personal revelation, except for when it came from Paul. His visions were canonized, while the others were considered deception, probably because he was a Roman citizen and he taught submission and obedience to the empire, which ultimately served them. They got in there and wove in all their Roman pagan themes into the mythology of Jesus in order to make it more palatable to the Gentiles. They got in quick and they distorted Jesus' message really early on, to the point where we don't know what those early Christians truly believed. They were persecuted, they were killed, their texts were destroyed. Anything that went against the new uprising transition from the Roman Empire to the Roman Catholic Church was destroyed. We may never know the full scope of Jesus' teachings and what his mission here was really about. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching people to soften their hearts, to develop the eyes and ears to hear, to ask, seek, and knock, to go within, to develop an esoteric mindset in order to see the deeper messages of his parables and his teachings, to be able to recognize whether something is of Jesus' nature or some sort of distortion added into the Bible from the church. We have been taught to blindly continue trusting the doctrine and philosophy of a system that was never designed to preserve and protect Jesus' movement. It was designed to control and manipulate it into something that would serve them in the end.
Elizabeth juga menjelaskan bagaimana sejarahnya ajaran Yesus bisa berbeda dengan kekristenan saat ini.
Sometimes I wonder, where did Christianity go so wrong? Because truly, like, Jesus' teachings were so beautiful. Loving your neighbor, compassion, forgiveness, good works, the kingdom being within you, God being this loving father, all of this beauty. And yet the version we have today is fixated on blood and sacrifice and atonement and sin. And honestly, all this pagan ritual sounding bullshit that I don't get it. I don't get where it went wrong. And then I remember, oh yeah, Paul is where it went wrong. You have no idea how many Christians I have heard say, well, you can't have Jesus without Paul. And you guys are absolutely insane. Like, this is probably the false prophet that he warned about that would come in his name and distort the teachings. You guys think it's, coming now. It's like, no, he was speaking to his disciples in that time period. Paul started teaching his gospel, which was what he called it, his gospel, 20 or more years after Jesus died, right? So the movement was alive and well for 20 plus years before Paul came along. And I'm like 24, so that's a long time. That's like my entire life for me to know one version of Christianity before some guy comes along, had some hallucinations, claims that he has the true message of Jesus more than his own brother James, more than the disciples who knew him in real life. It's honestly crazy. I've been reading this book called Paul and Jesus by James Tabor, who has been studying this topic for like 40 something years, probably even more now. And he makes an interesting point that we need to read the New Testament backwards, where we need to start with Paul's teachings that go back to, I think, 50 AD or even maybe 30 AD, I don't know. And then you can see how his theology seeped into the canonical gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they are from around 60 AD. And you see all the similarities. It's not meant to be read in the order that it is, because Paul heavily influenced what was included in the Bible. Because again, Christianity wanted one unified, theology, doctrine, and text to live by, and that wasn't what was going on. There was many Christianities in those first 100 years after Jesus died. And again, just pointing out that before he came along to distort everything, there was a version of Christianity out there that had nothing to do with his view, his revelations, and it was much more aligned with what Jesus actually teached. But unfortunately, Paul had ties with Roman people, he was a Roman citizen, and he had connections, and I think for whatever reason, they pushed his Gentile, teachings to the forefront and kind of used those in the New Testament. And it's really unfortunate because we really don't know what those early Christians really believed. They wiped them out. They pretty much killed them because, again, they wanted unity and they destroyed their teachings, they destroyed their texts, and just pushed what aligned with their narrative. And Paul just happened to be the tool, the plant that they used to create that version of Christianity. And honestly, 6 out of 13 of the epistles or letters that are attributed to Paul weren't even written by Paul. So obviously people were just slapping his name. He became this authority figure of a completely different message, and anything that aligned with that message was like, oh yeah, that's Pauline. So we are either living in a time of churchianity or Paulianity, but it's definitely not Christ Christianity, unfortunately.
Elizabeth juga mempertanyakan kenapa gereja takut dengan penemuan baru tentang Yesus.
If Jesus said that nothing that is hidden will not be made manifest and nothing that is secret will not be known and come to light, then why is it that the church is the first ones to go after any sort of new discovery that might give us more insight on Jesus and his life? For example, in the late 1800s, a Russian man named Nicholas Notovich was traveling through India when he had heard stories about a man called Saint Isa who sounded a lot like Jesus. When he started asking questions, they were like, yeah, that's the same guy. He actually traveled through India as a young boy and a young adult during those missing 18 years in the Bible. Naturally, Notovich was intrigued, so he started digging deeper, and through a series of synchronicities, he was led to the manuscripts in a Tibetan monastery that recorded the teachings of Jesus and his time there. So he goes back to Russia, he publishes the book called The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, and who is the first to go after him? The Catholic and Orthodox Church. Why? Probably because they were the ones suppressing this information in the first place, but also because they want sole authority and claim to Jesus, and if there's other information coming out, that means that they are now not the only credible source to go to when it comes to understanding his life. So if you're ever wondering why these theories are still niche and fringe, it's because they will get in front of them and they will manufacture evidence and proof and all kinds of facts to disprove anything that contradicts what they teach. Because if Jesus is aligned with Eastern philosophy, that would expose all the distortion that they created regarding his life and his teachings. So again, like Jesus said, nothing hidden will not be made manifest and nothing that is secret will not come to light. So it's up to you to decide whether these new discoveries are resonant with you and might actually line up, or continue to trust the church and all the facts and evidence that they give you.
Elizabeth selalu mempertanyakan kenapa harus menyembah Yesus alih-alih menjadi seperti dia. Maksudnya mengikuti ajarannya saja tanpa menyembah.
Someone please explain to me at what point and when in Christianity did they flip the script and tell us that we need to worship Jesus rather than become like him? Because genuinely, if you look at his teachings,
That's nowhere there. Like, it's become like me. It's, yeah, he's saying I and the Father are one, and through being reborn and, renewing your heart, you also can do that. You can do what I can do and more. And then we have Paul, his apostle, who never met him and had some epiphanies and revelations and claims to have the true gospel and the true teachings of Jesus, despite going against what Jesus' own brother James taught, which was always works over faith. Paul goes and contradicts all of that, creates his own doctrine, and then seeps that into the entire religion because his teachings are some of the earliest that we have, and they're even older than the first manuscripts of the 4 Gospels that we have. So, yes, it is in the Bible because Pauline doctrine was already seeping in. Mind you, Paul studied and was raised as a Hellenistic Jew, and they had pagan deification all over. And even if he was a Jew himself, he was influenced by pagan theology of a demigod coming and dying and atoning for the sins of his people, the sacrifice, the resurrection, like all of that was Pauline doctrine. So tell me please, where did we go wrong? Where did we start putting Paul's teachings above Jesus's?
Terakhir, Elizabeth memberikan kesimpulan bahwa menyembah Yesus sebagai penyelamat adalah salah.
I really wish that more people could start to view Jesus as a teacher, as a guide, as a brother, as a master, rather than a savior. People believe that this will hinder their relationship, that it takes away from your love from him, and it's simply not true. It only creates a more intimate connection. Because when you view him as an object of worship, that creates separation. You are a subject and he is an object, right? It is not me and you eye to eye. It is him over here on a pedestal, something you can never attain. So why bother trying? Just pray to him and all your problems will be solved. This is the downfall of religion. This is the downfall of Christianity. From the point that that doctrine became established, Christianity was on a downhill slope. It's time to reclaim our relationship with Jesus and realize that he came as an elder brother to guide us rather than a savior to fix us, to save us, to heal us, etc. That work we need to do ourselves. He can just show us the way, but ultimately we have to be the ones to save ourselves.
Sekian video Cahaya Iman hari ini. Jangan lupa like dan subscribe dan sampaikan pendapat kamu di kolom komentar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.